Big changes on the political scene.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
So I said changes. Well, there's only one guy that's made a decision, but guess what? That's going to make a whole bunch of people rethink about what they're doing and take a stab at what is now an open, big-time political opportunity here in Rhode Island. That is a vacancy being created in the 1st District for Congress, where veteran David Cicilline has decided he's got something else he wants to do. I'll introduce my guest here in a moment. I always check in with Joe Fleming whenever there's a political consult necessary. First, if you hadn't heard this kind of mini shot heard around the political world this week, here's a story from Channel 12.
Rhode Island has not seen a special election for a seat in Congress since 1997. That changes this year, with Congressman David Cicilline leaving Capitol Hill to take over the Rhode Island Foundation come June.
I'm a state constitutional law scholar.
The big news caught the attention of a professor in Pennsylvania who says Rhode Island may want to take a second look at its special election laws when it comes to a federal race. He says the problem is the Federal Uniformed and Overseas Citizen Absentees Voting Act, which makes sure people living or serving abroad get a ballot in time. The law requires that those voters receive their mail ballots 45 days before any election.
The problem is primarily with the fact that candidate filing in Rhode Island with respect to the primary election occurs on day 38 and day 39 before the primary election. So within that 45-day window, voters are legally required to be able to cast absentee ballots, but candidate filing wouldn't have taken place by that point.
The executive director of Common Cause Rhode Island agrees. He's urging local lawmakers to act fast and adjust the schedule to comply. Otherwise, he warns, the U.S. Department of Justice could sue the state.
We're interested in making sure that federal law is upheld, so that all voters can participate in this special election.
Under state law, the governor can't call for a special election until the seat is officially vacated, which in Cicilline's case is June 1st. Both say that means there's time to act on it.
We have every responsibility to make sure that they're able to cast a lawful ballot. So this is an easy fix, and I think for the sake of our democracy, it's a necessary one.
Okay. Are you a legal political scholar as well?
No, I'm not.
No. Best laid plans. I'm just going to be completely candid with you. That was not the package I was thinking we were going to talk about. But we'll talk about the many interested parties in this seat. All right. Welcome, Joe. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
But that is, look, it's actually kind of cool that we ran that piece, because one man's decision has an impact on so many things. And if we have some nuances to make sure that everybody who wants to vote can vote, well, then we got to take care of that as well. Before we get into the details, before we get into who wants it, before we get into how we structure a special election, what was the top pollsters' thought when you heard the news?
I was surprised, Dan. David Cicilline's in a very safe seat now. He could stay there for the rest of his life if he wanted to. But I think he realized, or he felt, that he's probably going as far as he can in Congress, moving up the ladder of the Democratic Party. And also the Republicans now in the majority. It's going to be very difficult to get things done over the next 2 years. So I think he saw an opportunity to come back to the state of Rhode Island and help people throughout the state by running the Rhode Island Foundation.
Yeah, it's a different climate down there now, and it's got to be a buzzkill for Democrats who have kind of run the House show under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi for quite some time, to suddenly realize I mean, obviously, when the election results come out in the fall, you realize that you got to prepare to be in the minority. But it's another thing to actually be living in it for the first month or two, right?
Yes, he's been in the minority before, and he knows what it's like. There's been a number of years Republicans were in charge when he was in the minority. He got a chance to be in the majority. I think he liked it a lot, but now he's back in the minority. And again, I think he's been there 12 years. He was mayor for 8 years. He was state representative before that. I think he feels like it's time to come home and, you know, do something that he feels he can make a big impact in the state of Rhode Island on by running the foundation.
Yeah, just in terms of the Washington culture, you know, the Republicans are beginning to show a little bit of their colors, but I don't think we're even close to some of the things that will probably make Democrats incredibly uncomfortable. Frivolous investigations. I mean, the Hunter Biden thing just seems to be the thing that they're living for. Kevin McCarthy, I think, showed, the new Speaker of the House, showed a little bit of maturity when he met with the President at the White House to talk about what is this pending problem that we have here, and that is whether or not we're going to increase the debt limit.
Right.
And you know, they want some negotiation in terms of budget. The President just wants a pure debt limit increase. That's going to come tumbling at us in a matter of a couple of months. What do you expect the climate to be like down there right now?
I think it's going to be nasty for a while. I think the debt limit, they're going to really have a problem getting the House to come on board. Obviously, the Democrats control the Senate, so that's okay. But in the House, I think there's going to have to be a lot of negotiations. And again, the President says just to prove this is money that's already spent. It's not new money we're going to spend. We can talk about making cuts after we approve the debt limit. So we're going to see who's the strongest as far as going forward. I mean, Kevin McCarthy has to be very careful because he has a lot of Republicans who want to see cuts. And again, any person can stand up and say, let's vote for a new speaker under the new rules. So it's going to be very difficult for McCarthy.
Yeah, we really never had a chance to talk about that, Joe. Kevin McCarthy more or less gave up most of the store in order to get the sign on top of the door, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. It was, 15 ballots before he gave up enough to get those other Republicans to come over and support him. So, I mean, he has a very thin majority right now. I mean, it's like 5 representatives. If he loses some representatives, like they talk about Representative Santos from New York, if once he's gone and a Democrat takes a seat, now it's down to 4. So he has to be very careful. He can't afford to lose any support among the Republicans, so he has to give in a lot to a lot of these very conservative Republicans.
And that was some scene. Did you watch all of that?
I watched a lot of that, yes.
That was incredible. Literally between the 14th and 15th ballot, you saw the wheels coming off the Republican Party.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were just in chaos. They had to do something, and basically McCarthy basically almost said, whatever you want, just vote for me.
Yeah. All right. So given it's a crazy culture in Washington right now, and the 1st District Congressman has I don't know, capitalized on this where am I? Capitalized, what camera am I on? Capitalized, come on over here. Capitalized on this opportunity. We'll talk about what that means now in terms of how the state proceeds and who may be interested. Stay with us, please. All right, late summer primary. Look, Joe, I might be the only member of the media that has a problem with this, not with David Cicilline's decision to join the Rhode Island Foundation, but I think there are some questions that he needs to answer still, which is, when did the search team reach out to him? You know, was it pre-election? Look, Neil Steinberg, who runs the Rhode Island Foundation, I think has done an exemplary job in this community and has been active but nonpartisan. Right. Yep. I don't know that he had a recommend. You know, obviously he said all the right things when the decision by the board was made to hire David Cicilline. But this is going to be a completely different culture for the Rhode Island Foundation.
Yes.
He's got to have to pull back his partisanship and reach out to everyone. Legacy, reputation, resume notwithstanding, that's going to be hard. But I don't know when the board reached out.
I thought I heard the congressman say it's just been in the last few months that they reached out to him about this. So it sounds like it was after the election, not before the election.
Okay.
And even if they did reach out to him before, they didn't decide on him until recently.
Understood. But I got a bridge I want to sell you in terms of how this stuff really works. Because when a guy as profound as Steinberg resigns,
Right.
The scuttle about who's out there and who might happens immediately. And to his credit, he resigned. He gave notice summer-ish.
Right.
So anyway, putting that aside, even if it just came up and it's an opportunity that he couldn't pass up. Look, in America, people can do what they want.
Right.
He does have a certain responsibility, though, in terms of, equity. Even inside a Democratic Party that is minority, we just lost Jim Langevin in the 2nd district, meaning he made a proper time decision. I'm not going to run again. Right. Now we take that veteran guy, and we take this veteran guy, and a delegation that's had that I think is punched over its weight, right? Because of time and expertise, has now been damaged.
Yeah. We're down to the bottom of seniority. I mean, whoever wins CD1 is going to be the least senior representative in Congress.
Period.
So, period. There's no power there. It's going to take years. The one thing that's in our favor, we have 2 senators who have been there for a while.
Yeah, I don't know how long Jack Reed's going to stick around. He's up in 24.
24 or 26, I can't remember which.
Anyway, the Senate stuff. Yeah, listen, Reed and Whitehouse stars in the Democratic Party, no doubt about that. Bring the bacon home, they do that kind of thing. But, all due respect to Seth Magaziner, he'd be the first to tell you, I'm brand new.
Right.
And so whoever goes down there is going to be brand new. I believe the longer somebody can serve in that seat prior to the 2024 election, the better. And I see no reason whatsoever why David Cicilline's got to milk this thing to May 31st, which will inevitably, because of these laws that we were talking about and the 45-day periods between primary and in general, force this thing at the earliest August, most likely September and November. When, if he resigned today, constituent services could continue.
Right.
Congress can run constituent services for the district without a rep.
Right.
Create the vacancy. The governor can then say, okay, we need to do something because that's his responsibility. And as the Secretary of State has said to me, we could start this primary season in May and elect somebody in June.
Correct.
Do you think that's important?
Well,
I do.
I think no matter what, the time period for the election, once he resigns, is going to be the same. Whether he resigns in March or whether he resigns in
going forward.
June. Right, going forward. It's going to be the same time
But
period.
don't you think it's important to, what is this notion that, I'll get out in May, I start the foundation in June. It's all about, it feels like it's all about him.
Well, I'm assuming
How
that's
about
why.
the doggone, this really infuriates me. How about the district?
Well, as you said, the congressional office will still be running. His staff will still be there, but he won't be there anymore come June 1st. And again,
he could leave tomorrow and all that stuff would remain the same.
Right. But Congress is doing votes now. In the summer, Congress is in recess a lot of the time. So there won't be as many votes and things.
But let's not kid ourselves. We just spent time talking about how the Democrats have no juice and his vote's not going to matter. Is there one particular vote that really is important? That he will be a pivotal player in? I don't think so.
I don't think so, unless the debt limit comes up and there's a close vote on that before June 1st.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's his decision, obviously, what he wants to do. I mean, he could have resigned right now and, waited to June to take over the Rhode Island Foundation, but he decided to stay in Congress until then.
Well, I just think it's incredible that the entire media and political community is sitting around there, he's leaving in the end of May, blah, 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 blah. He's already put a damaged dent in the constituency by leaving midterm. I say the sooner the better. Now, look, it's a double-edged sword, because if you do it sooner, people who can write a check have a better chance of succeeding.
Correct.
At the same time, 3 months are going to make that big a difference for those fledgling candidates out there that can't write the check.
And there's a lot of them.
And we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. So who will? This is the big question. Big money people most likely, Joe?
I would think we're going to see some big money people, but we're going to see some people who may not have quite as much. a lot of these people are talking about running, the elected officials. Keep in mind, this is a free ride. If they run and lose, they don't lose anything. They still have their seat. You're not giving up anything. But I think money will be
Say that
important.
slowly again, because I want to make to be then people go, wait, what?
If you're running,
If you're already elected to something, and you take a flyer in this race, it doesn't require you to leave the seat that you're in.
That's correct.
So, for instance, since we go that, Mayor Grebian, for instance, who I think has had an itch to scratch, loves his city, and by all accounts has done a very good job as the mayor of that city, may very well be interested in this. He could run for this office and not give up his mayoral.
That's correct. That's correct. Anyone who's a state representative, state senator, councilman, mayor, they can run. If they lose, they still keep their current position.
Well, speaking of them, I'm going to give Matt a little run here because he's got all the pictures of all these guys, and I'm not going to stay in order. But given that we're talking, Matt's the director, by the way, does a great job. Nerona, here's. Did I put him in there? I think I did. He didn't say he wasn't interested when he was asked by some members of the press this week. Making no decisions right now, which is very different from, I just got elected to the top law enforcement position in Rhode Island, and I'm staying there. Did you react to that at all?
Well, I think a lot of the people are not closing the door right now because they want to see who actually decides to run and see what the field's going to look like.
Remember that we're old enough. Remember the game To Tell the Truth?
Yeah.
When the three people they'd stand and they'd look at each other, they'd stand and they'd look at each other, and then finally someone stood up. That's kind of what's going on here, right?
Absolutely, that's what we're seeing now. A lot of people are waiting to see what Helena Foulkes is going to do. Now, she ran for governor in the Democratic primary, came within 3% of defeating the incumbent governor. She has a lot of money. She can self-fund a campaign. Does she get in the race? That'll have an influence on some of these other people who are thinking about running. So I think she's, the people they're looking to see. The lieutenant governor.
She blew a bunch of money in this Democratic primary for governor. Millions.
Correct.
She's going to reach in and, well, you're the guy that helps me with this stuff too. How much dough do you think is required to run in this first congressional district race?
I would think probably at least $500,000 because a couple of reasons. One, you got to have TV. And two, we're talking about a smaller turnout, so a lot of grassroots organization to identify your voters and get them out to vote. And again, depending on how many people are in this race, you could win this race with 25% of the vote if there's 7 or 8 people running. So I mean, grassroots could be very important.
Well, 25% of the vote in the primary.
Primary, correct.
It's a D plus 20 type
of. Unbelievable, yeah.
It's so meaning
Heavily.
Democrat plus 20%.
Right.
No Republican can win this race?
It'll be difficult. I can't say no Republican can win. Ron Makeley won in CD1. He'd been, Congressman St. Germain was there for many years.
Brendan Daugherty gave Cicilline a run for his money as a Republican a few elections ago, but now is a Democrat.
Correct.
So he's not a candidate for that.
No. The problem a Republican has is the large areas.
And he's not interested, reportedly.
No, the large areas, Providence, Pawtucket, North Providence, East Providence, Woonsocket, Cumberland, all heavily Democratic when they vote. So where is the Republican going to get the votes from? That's their problem. Where in CD2, you can identify areas where there was Republican votes to get. And again, the Republicans ran a strong campaign in CD2 and still came up short. Would outside money come into CD1, into a district that leans very heavily Democratic? That's the question. You need to find a candidate who probably can self-fund.
So the complexion of CD1, we probably should have put a map up, I'm sorry, but here's Rhode Island, Providence.
Yep.
Most of Providence is in District 1. And then the district moves kind of around Providence and down the East Bay and into the ocean somewhere, which is, I don't know, the gerrymandering of these districts and the way they've been map drawn the entire time is kind of something. But speaking of Providence, Sabina Matos. Now here's the former council president, gets picked to be lieutenant governor by Dan McKee when he rises to governor, and then runs as a kind of a co-partner and wins handily. She's looking at, if the governor is healthy, God bless him, he'd probably run for re-election. So she's looking at 8 years sitting there in the number 2 spot. She may jump ship.
Absolutely. I think she's seriously thinking about it, looking at the field and see what comes out there.
And again, she can jump ship with no risk.
Right, exactly. Now, if she happens to run and win.
Would I lose my television show if I jump ship?
I would think you might.
No, wait a second. Don't I have the same cover? I'm kidding. I'm sort of kidding. No, the point is that if you can keep your gig and take a flyer.
That's what I'm saying.
This is kind of like
it's a free
the
ride.
Wild Wild West.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But Providence, you have to carry Providence.
Well, you have to hold your own in Providence at least. Depends on what.
And she would hold her own in Providence.
Pawtucket, I think Pawtucket's the largest block of votes, and Providence is right there with them. But the question is, again, special election, Dan, the primary is going to be in the summer. A lot of it's going to be based on turnout. Who can get the vote out?
Are you worried about turnout?
I'm a little bit worried. I was thinking the turnout might be somewhere between 30 and 40,000 people, which is a low number. But then I started to think, wait a minute now, voting has changed. You have early voting 20 days before. You also have mail ballots anybody could apply for. So more people could get into this election and vote than having to wait to the actual primary day.
Any chance a flyer from the Speaker of the House, Joe Shekarchi, who's amassed a ton of dough?
Well, first, he can't use that money running for Congress. He has to transfer it.
Very good point. All the money that everybody who's in the state arena has stays put. They have to start from, or they have to change out. It's just a whole big nightmare.
Right, it could be done. Now, I would be absolutely shocked if Joe Shekarchi ran. I think he...
Not his district.
Yeah, it's not his district, and that's not a big thing anyway.
Don't have to live there.
Right. But I think he's enjoying being Speaker of the House. He's been there a couple of years now. I mean, things seem to be going well in the House of Representatives. So I would be totally shocked if he jumped over. I don't expect that at all.
All right, I only have half a minute here. What's your projection on how many folks will seek this race?
I think in the end, it'll start narrowing down depending on who announces. If you see a couple heavyweights get in there, I think some of these other people who are reps and senators realize they can't raise the money and they won't run. I think you might say 3 or 4 people in the primary, and I think the Republicans will put up a candidate. How strong of a candidate, I don't know. If they can find somebody who will self-fund, that would help.
So likely the primary will choose the winner.
At this point, it looks that way. Also, keep this in mind in the primary. Special interest groups, a group like the unions, if they all supported one candidate with a low turnout, they could really deliver votes.
Gotcha. Thanks for your expertise, as always.
My pleasure.
It's going to be an interesting summer for those of you who like the politics. Final word next. Before Joe left, he said, don't forget about Bob DeSilva, the mayor of East Providence. If the mayors all formed a little thing on a small turnout, that they could make some kind of bullet strategy. Look, whatever it turns out to be, I think it ought to start sooner than later. But, you know, I seem to be the only guy that thinks that's important for the constituents. We'll see you next week and on the radio on WPRI. Bye.